You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hi there, welcome to Stand Tall and Own It. It's the podcast where purpose-driven women learn to lead with authenticity and impact. I'm Andrea Johnson, the Intentional Optimist, and October is all about activation, speaking and leading boldly, without apology. And after spending September reclaiming your discernment and defining your own truth, now it's time to act from that place. And that's exactly the work we're going to be doing together at Live to Lead in just 2 weeks from now in Charlottesville, Virginia, and 3 weeks from now in Lynchburg. So consider this episode a little bit of a warm-up lap, all right? And today we're going to talk about resistance. Yep, it's a pull up the sleeves kind of conversation. My sleeves are up and I'm ready to go. Now, resistance isn't always what you think it is. May not be the definition you've ever heard before. It's not fist-shaking protests, shouting matches, or burning everything down, as much as that sounds very satisfying sometimes. Most of the time, resistance looks quieter. It looks like steadiness. It looks like calm authority. It looks like the quiet refusal to conform when you know the cost would still be your integrity. Now, since February 6th of 2025, I have started every single day with the same word written at the top of my page. And by my page, I mean my planner. I have a written, a write-in daily planner, and every day it says one word, resist. And then about 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, I don't know, I gave it a subtitle. I should go back. I should have checked the date on this too. But the subtitle is Joyful Defiance. So every day I say, resist, Andrea, and use joyful defiance. That practice has reminded me day after day that resistance isn't about fighting everything out there. It's about conviction inside. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and refusing to surrender your humanity in the process. And that's what we're going to explore in this episode. Resistance as a leadership practice. Not cruelty, not conformity, but conviction. Lived out with clarity, courage, and compassion. Now, when I talk about resistance, I don't mean rebellion for rebellion's sake. Now, I'm Gen X, so we're all about that. We get it. But that's not what I mean here. And I don't mean contrarianism, no matter how much fun that could actually be sometimes, or arguing just to argue. And to be clear, when I say resistance, I'm also not talking about partisan politics or the latest headline. Those are all surface level things. What I'm talking about is bigger, more personal, and honestly, much more enduring than any election cycle or headline. Resistance is about how you show up in every arena of your life: work, family, faith, friendships, and how you protect your humanity in spaces that would rather have you just blend in. So resistance in this context is rooted in conviction. It's standing your ground because you know your core values and you've done the discernment work to decide what matters most. So the real danger is not fear. The real danger is blending in so much that you completely lose yourself. I heard someone say recently, and I can't remember who it is, so if it's you, let me know. I heard this. This person said to me, I adapted so much. I adapted, and then I adapted, and then I adapted right out of myself. Wow. Doesn't that ring true? That's what conformity does to us. It erodes identity. It convinces you to trade authenticity for approval. Ooh, what a bad exchange, right? Here's one way I've seen that play out, like when someone asks an honest question, just to seek clarity or challenge an idea. It gets labeled as disrespect or even insubordination. I've actually seen people in church or other volunteer organizations, even in client workspaces, written up or sent to HR just for pushing back. Pushing back or asking questions is not aggression. It's not rebellion. It's the kind of questioning that every healthy culture needs. Resistance in that context is the courage to keep asking those questions, even when it may cost you favor with the people in power. But resistance also isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like quietly protecting your humanity, even when it costs you. Maybe it looks like letting a conversation die rather than taking the bait. Sometimes it looks like redirecting a dicey topic with a loved one, letting them finish, then shifting the subject without conflict. Now, that may sound really small, but in that moment, you are in charge of the conversation. That is resistance. Sometimes it does look like big decisions, like walking away from a job, a relationship, a partnership, because staying would have required you to surrender too much. That's all resistance. It's not about destruction, none of it. It's about preservation. Preservation of your integrity, your joy, and your voice. So if resistance is about conviction, then the posture that we take in that resistance matters just as much. Poet Toy Derrico once said, "Joy is an act of resistance." And I found that to be deeply true. Because joy is not naive happiness, right? It's not pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Joy is rooted in freedom, the freedom to live and lead unapologetically. And I see this so clearly in my son. At 16, I am not sure that we can fully name his core values just yet, but I do know this. He has a tender heart, a fierce sense of justice, and a winsome sense of humor. Those three things together are like gold. He cares deeply about others. He recognizes when something is harmful or beneficial, and he's willing to fight for what's right, all while diffusing tension with humor. And there have been times when his ability to laugh in the middle of hard situations has helped us, his slightly jaded parents, move through something much more quickly. That's not just personality. That's resilience. That's joy acting as resistance. For me, joyful defiance has become a mantra. It's how I remind myself that resistance isn't always heavy, grim, or exhausting. Sometimes it looks like choosing laughter when fear is the easier option. Sometimes it looks like celebrating beauty in a world that insists on despair. Sound familiar? And then being told, "Oh, you're being frivolous." No, I'm just celebrating beauty. Sometimes it's a simple yes to curiosity, generosity, or wonder, because those are the very things that conformity cannot stand. This is where the way I lead comes through. It's a blend of, I call it valor and grace. Valor says, stand tall, hold your ground. And grace says, do it with compassion and don't lose your humanity in the process. Together, they keep resistance both strong and humane. And notice, this connects right back to what I've already said. Resistance isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. Joyful defiance shows up most powerfully in steady, quiet choices. Not to conform when everything around you says, hey, just go along with all this, right? It'll be fine. It's a little like a candle that refuses to go out. It doesn't rage like a wildfire, but it does keep burning. Steady, persistent, casting just enough light to remind you and everyone else watching that the darkness doesn't get the last word. That's joyful defiance, the courage to resist, lit by the joy that keeps you human. So what does resistance look like in leadership, right? It can be a little different sometimes. I'm very much of the mindset that what we do in our own personal lives is how we lead, but sometimes it needs to look a little different. It looks like naming and holding your core values when you're pressured otherwise. For me, it's authenticity. That's a big one. It's one of the values I've held firm even when it cost me something. Walking away from my former job wasn't easy, but staying would have meant losing myself. I've also turned down contracts that would have compromised my values. And those decisions were not convenient, but they were necessary. That's resistance. It also looks like refusing to dehumanize others, even in polarized environments. Yes, I'm speaking to right now in our 2025 October, when the culture might say, hey, you have to choose a side and then tear the other one down. Resistance says, I will not play that game. It is possible to stand your ground without stripping others of their dignity. Resistance looks like choosing steadiness when urgency or fear try to dictate your decisions. Every day, right? When the pressure is on, the temptation is to react fast. But the wiser move often is to just pause. We just talked about this like 2 episodes ago. To give yourself the space for discernment in a culture that rewards hot takes and speed. And resistance can look like standing your ground with both grace and clarity. It's the moment you calmly say, Here's what I can do, and here's what I cannot do. No drama, no cruelty, just conviction delivered with compassion. This is leadership resistance, grounded, steady, human. And if I go back to that candle image, this is where it matters most. In a world that rewards loud and flashy, your steady flame of conviction is what helps others see clearly and follow with confidence. I cannot tell you how many people have had a conversation with me or emailed me based on a podcast episode or a newsletter that went out and said, I needed this steadiness. I needed this grounding, right? Now, keeping myself grounded, that can be difficult, but this is the work that I do, and it's so important in order to have that resist joyful defiance every day. And here exactly is why this conversation matters right now. Thrive, which is my word for 2025, means much more than survive, right? When you think about surviving, you're not thinking about thriving. You're thinking about the bare minimum, like just scraping by. So thriving is not just about getting through the day or checking off the list. It's about resisting depletion, resisting cynicism, resisting conformity. Thriving leaders are the ones who have the courage to keep showing up with conviction and the joy to keep showing up as fully human. And that's exactly what Live to Lead is about. It's a day set aside for activation, for leaders like you to gather, recharge, refocus, and then rise. But let me be clear. This isn't your typical, quote, conference. Typical conferences are another form of conformity. I mean, you walk in, somebody talks at you for hours, and you take a couple of breaks in between, you scribble notes that you're never going to use, and you walk out unchanged. Maybe a little inspired, but that peters off after a couple of days, right? That's not what we're doing here. Live to Lead in Charlottesville and in Lynchburg is joyful defiance in action. It's integrated engagement. After each speaker, we're going to take time to apply what you just heard to your real-life leadership. We're going to connect all the dots and bring them all together, how understanding your core values or living out the tenets of intentional optimism actually translates big ideas into real-world goals and strategies. This isn't about collecting information. It's about transformation. It's about building conviction into your leadership muscle in real time. It's how we keep that steady flame alive, not by listening passively, but by practicing it together. And we're almost there. Charlottesville is just 2 weeks away, and Lynchburg is just 3. These rooms are designed for leaders who don't just want to survive another quarter, but who are ready to strengthen their conviction and live out resistance in the healthiest, most impactful way possible. Resistance isn't anger or rebellion, my friend. It is conviction anchored in joy. When you resist conformity, you make space for courage, creativity, and humanity in leadership. So here's your action step for this week. Name one belief, one standard, or one boundary that you're totally committed to, even if it's uncomfortable. Practice speaking or acting from that place, small or big. The point is to practice conviction without apology, or without anger, or without dehumanizing anybody else. And as always, I'm going to leave you with a few questions to take into your week. You might need these to help you figure out how you're going to do that action step, okay? First, where in your leadership are you tempted to conform instead of stand in conviction? That one will help you figure out exactly what belief or standard or boundary you need to be committed to. All right, number 2, how could you embody joyful defiance, leading with both steadiness and celebration in one situation this week? I know it's going to come up, and it may come up at work. It may come up in your family. It may come up in a sports arena, or if you're coaching soccer, or if you're at church, it's going to come up. So think about how you will embody joyful defiance, leading with both steadiness and celebration. And number 3, what boundary or value is worth holding firm, even if it costs you comfort or approval? That one might be your top core value. Right? It might be something that is that folds into that core value. It may be a tangential one. If you haven't done your core values, this is the time to do them, right? So stand tall and own it, my friend. Resistance is your birthright as a leader of integrity. And if you need a place to strengthen that conviction, join us at Thrive in 25 Live to Lead, Charlottesville, Lynchburg, right? These events aren't about sitting in a chair all day scribbling notes. They're just not. They're about integrated engagement, practicing what you hear as you hear it, and translating those ideas into how you lead tomorrow. And if you're ready to take this one reflection time a little bit deeper, there are a couple ways I can help. You can start with your core values blueprint, because if you don't know what your core values are, how do you know to stand in them, right? It's free. It's going to help you get anchored in who you are and how you lead. If you're craving real change in your day-to-day leadership, you can join the Core Values Coaching Program. We pair personal coaching with a self-paced course to walk through this work together. And we do it with lots and lots of pushback, right? It's like, that's my job. You do your work. I push back and say, hang on, what do you think about this? How would you define that, right? So this is where you learn that joyful defiance. And of course, if you're in Virginia or you're ready to travel, we'd love to have you. I'd love to see you at Live to Lead Charlottesville or Lynchburg. The links are all in the show notes, so grab what you need and let's keep this momentum going. Now, next week, we're going to talk about how to lead with boundaries without feeling mean. I can't tell you how many times I've set a boundary and somebody's like, you're so mean. I'm like, no, it's just a boundary, right? Or I've let people walk all over my boundaries, right? We're going to explore why boundaries are leadership, not rejection, and how courage and care can coexist when you set them. But for now, stand tall, lead like you mean it. And remember, resistance doesn't have to be loud or flashy. Sometimes it's as simple as writing resist, joyful defiance at the top of every page every day, and then choosing to live from that place. Until next time.